was a really up-and-coming school, and it's a pretty big school now. And if you go to JMU and you Google JMU Fanatic, F-A-N, I'm not a great speller, right? T-I-C, right? That was me. They still use that. That was my recommendation to them, and they used that, came from Tickets and Promotion. But the guy who I assisted was a really bright guy and brilliant guy. We're still friends. He's in his 70s now. And he was a business guy. He was a coach, and he was in Tickets and Promotion. So I started getting exposed to people other than wrestlers and PE majors and college guys and college girls. And I had I worked hard and I liked what I was doing. People would say, you ought to be in sales. You've got a good personality. Well, let me tell you something. First of all, if you're in sales, in business and sales, you better like people. You know, if you're going to sell to people, you better like them. If you don't like them, chances are you're not going to sell much. But I can tell you, with all earnest, when you sell, whoever you're selling to, you better be able to listen. It's more than just a personality. You got to understand needs and have solutions to people. You know, it's not just a personality. But you should be in sales. So I was coaching. I got my degree, my graduate degree. I wanted to be a wrestling coach, and my wife had been working in the community, making most of the money in our house as I'm, doing this stuff, being a coach. And her employer really liked her and found me a job because they didn't want to lose her. And it was going to be sales. He had an insurance company selling property and casualty insurance. I knew nothing about sales. So I bought a book. I got a book on leadership. I still have the book. And it was really simple reading. I mean, it was probably a 8th or 10th grade level reading, real simple, and just talking about principles, how to communicate, how to listen, how to dress for success, how to get involved, things of that. And that's how it really started with me. I didn't have the advantage that you have. My guess is, and I don't know your all story, and I'm sure some of you have had some tragedy in your story, but by and large, you're probably from good parents, as I was, who are somewhat educated and have already done something positive and successful in business or in the community, and then you're a disciple of that, trying to be the best next generation. I'm reading a book. And then I started reading other books. And I still to this day read books, more to get me excited or keep me focused and learn about things. But I didn't have the advantage. I didn't have classes. I didn't have focus groups and all the things that you all are exposed to. And I would say, number one, your education is something that you take for granted. We all take it for granted. But your education is like the car, right? Some people have Volkswagens, some people have Lexuses, some people have Maseratis, my favorite car, right? Some people have Volvos. It's a car, okay? Some people get degrees from Westchester. Some people get degrees from MIT. Some people get degrees from Harvard. We don't all necessarily have the ability to get into Harvard or the connections to get into Harvard, right? Some of it's Westchester, a great school, okay? That's a car. That's the car you have, right? Then you have your experience, right? Think about when you started driving. You knew what the car was, right? But how you drive that car, you learn an experience. And you guys are 18 to 23, 24 years old in here. The first day you drove your car, like I live in Northern Virginia, and I took my daughter, when I first started, we went into Verizon parking lot where there was nothing but a building far away, and I said, okay, Allie, start driving. And there was nothing there, right? It was pretty easy. She couldn't do any damage. She did find a way to do some damage. I can't believe that. She did. But the first day she drove on the Virginia Beltway, the first time, where there's 6 lanes, and it seems like they're coming in both directions, hey, that's probably tough, isn't it? It's a lot different than the Verizon lot. But now with experience. So experience makes a better car. The other thing which I had, what I had, and I still have, is I have attitude. And attitude is the gas that you put in that car that helps you drive the car. Because you could be the smartest person with the greatest education and outstanding parents who've given you everything, and even you've experienced some things. But if you don't have attitude, you ain't going to be successful. You know, more likely you're going to fail, just like driving a car. Okay? You can't teach attitude. Now again, I was a PE major, and let me tell you, Westchester to this day, we don't have, you know, the school isn't as big as it used to be. But to this day, people say Westchester. Wow. Boy, that was a heck of a PE program. When I was here, the music department was really strong, and the PE department was an education school. But I've got a lot of friends who I wrestled with who are successful business people. Two guys who I wrestled with were doctors, and I'm not talking about doctor of physical education, which is great, but I mean medical doctors. I mean good people, sharp people that came through here, and they made something with what they had. So that's a little bit about, you know, my intro. Who am I? I'm really a coach. I've always wanted to be a coach. I just sold my business a couple years ago, and I didn't know what I was going to do, so I talked to my wife. I always was involved in coaching. She said, John, you're a coach. You coach me. You coach your daughter. The way you ran your business was as a coach. Who am I? I'm a coach. I'm a teacher. I have a BS in education. I've got an MSED in education. I student taught at Avon Grove High School and Media Elementary School. I'm a salesperson. We're all sales. You start out an infant, you're a salesperson when you start crying, right? You learn how to manipulate and to do things. But I love sales, and I'm a salesperson. I'm selling you on ideas right now. You know, that's who I am. My wife said, John, stop selling. You know, I married you already. You got the sale. She's ready to throw me out. You're going to lose the sale. I'm a manager. I was a manager. I started out, you know, I managed people, and I'm a leader. I'm a leader. But at the end of the day, I'm a coach. Because whatever you're doing, you're coaching. Whatever you're doing, you know, coaching is leadership. Parenting is coaching and leadership. Leading a business. And that. My history, again, I'm a wrestler. I'm 52 years old now. I'm a little broken down. My knees have arthritis. I still consider myself a wrestler. Right? I still consider myself a wrestler. Got a couple wrestlers in here. You know, I used to sort of look like that. I'm a wrestling coach. JMU was really important to me. It's something you're going to find out. Where you are in high school, your circle of friends, your most influential touches are going to be the people you meet here at Westchester. They will become your circle, continuing going forward. My circle, Greg, who's in California, Anthony Stagliano, Mike Moyer. I do some work with the National Wrestling Coaches Association, a little part-time job that I have, one of the jobs I have. You know, Mike is a Westchester guy. That circle here is so important. I was a sales trainee. I mean, I didn't know the first thing about selling. And I was a moving company. Where I lived, people never moved. They moved to the graveyard. Then sales management, a business owner, a coach, an entrepreneur, to have that spirit. So in a nutshell, that's who I am, and really that's why I'm here. But wherever your journey starts, it's where it finishes. And in life, it never finishes until that day of doom. You know, it's always evolving. And I believe that a big part of my success is what I learned here and some of the values I had at Westchester. I've never been in this building. I was in the dean's office because I got in trouble a couple times. And I used to walk through that little tunnel you have there. I didn't even know the president was in here. But you've got a lot of great opportunity. This is a great place, and it's what you do with it. Now, I'll be coming back in 20 or 30 minutes to talk about some guiding principles that I have. But other than that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Dumas.
I just need a hookup.
Need that hookup?
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, thanks, John. John said something very important about the circle of friends, and it's amazing. We've known each other, I think, 35 years now. There's a group of us that all were part of our own fraternity, which is the wrestling team here. And I know we kind of sound like a bunch of old jocks, but I'm very proud of the fact that these gentlemen are my friends. And as John Lacata just said, we've got some people that we graduated with that are doing phenomenal things. As he mentioned, we've got people that are actually medical doctors. We actually have people that are CEOs of corporations. We have people that are some of the best wrestling coaches in the country, if not the world. And the thing that I always got out of Westchester, much like John, blue-collar family, dad was a professional fighter captain in Patterson, New Jersey, 8th grade education. Parents said as soon as you're old enough to get working papers, you're out of the house, you're getting a job in a factory. My mom, school teacher. It was pretty neat. My mom and I graduated college at the same time. She went back to school once my brother and I left the house. I was actually the first in my family to get a college education. But my parents made darn sure that carrot, in order to play athletics, because I was a pretty good baseball player in high school as well, not as good as my son who's got a scholarship to college right now to play ball, but pretty good baseball player, not bad wrestler, made to the New Jersey State Championships in 1974. But that was my carrot. If I didn't get the grades, I wasn't allowed to participate in sports. And in 5th grade, I came home with a real bad report card. My dad still laughs about this to this day. My father was a former CPO, basically a sergeant in the Navy. Tough guy. You didn't talk back in my household, not unless you didn't want to get a spoon broken over your head. And basically, at the end of the day, he said, "Sorry, son, I'm taking your mitt and your bat, and I'm locking it up in my foot locker." To this day, it still kills him that he had to do that. He wanted me to play baseball even more than I did, but education is everything. And a little bit about my journey. I originally came here. I was a pre-law political science major. Also took a dual major. Was also in public administration, and met John in the wrestling room, along with these other characters we were talking about. They were pretty successful people. But for me, I always had a sense that I knew something good was going to happen if I kept working and I kept being flexible. And I knew one thing: no one's ever going to work harder than I was. If I had a dream or if I had a goal, I was going to go out and I was going to grab it. And my first job out of graduating, I was accepted to graduate school at University of Arizona for their public administration and urban planning program. But I kind of said, maybe I'll take a gap here. If I find something really cool to do, I'm just going to travel for a bit. So a girl I dated here graduated a year ahead of me, and actually met her through wrestling because she was one of the, we called mat maids, kind of like a wrestling booster. I dated her, she graduated, and she got a job with American Airlines as a flight attendant. So I'm here, still doing school, calling up, "Hey, Cindy, what you up to?" "I'm flying out to Arizona. I get to spend 2 days. I'm going to the Grand Canyon." "Oh, that sounds like a pretty good gig." Next week I call up, "What are you doing this week?" "Oh, I'm flying to San Francisco. I get to spend the weekend. I'm going to go up to wine country, tour the Golden Gate Bridge." I'm going, "Wait a minute, they're actually paying you to do this?" He didn't make a ton of money. So when I graduated, I said, well, heck, I want to travel a bit. Better enjoying the Merchant Marine, I guess. So I actually interviewed. I was one of 5,000 applicants. And they took 18 kids. We were all kids, 18, 19, 20 years old. And I got 22 years old. And I got a job as a flight attendant out of high school, out of college here, out of Westchester State. Great job. Did it for about a year, and I started thinking, gosh, I really don't want this to be my career. I wanted to be able to travel for free, see the world. So I actually asked the company I worked for, called Evergreen International out of McMinnville, Oregon, if they had anything else that I can get involved with. So the last 9 months I worked in flight operations, which was basically setting up schedules for the crews. And I started to learn how to use a telex machine. Anyone here ever hear of a telex machine? It's like ancient technology. It's kind of like a rotary phone on the wall. Any of you kids ever seen one of those? Yeah, it's like, your grandmother has one of those. Like, what's this thing? It's like dial-o-matic. I figured out how many calories I got today. You put it in a museum. Well, a telex machine was something, it was basically a printer with a keyboard, and at the whopping speed of 110 bits per second, I'm not talking 110,000 bits per second, I'm talking 110 bits per second, a little message would spit out of the printer, and it would tell you, okay, well, here's your flight crew, here's how many meals you have for the plane, here's what you need to do, blah, blah, blah. You tear it off, and then you type back in, and at the amazing speed of 110 bits per second, it would go back to somewhere else in the world. So I actually learned, without knowing what I was doing, very rudimentary telecommunications and data communication skills. 1982, they shut down their charter operation. I got laid off. I was going to go to grad school, so I took all my free flight passes that I had, which was really cool about working for an airline. Back in that day, you got to fly around for basically 25 bucks a ticket. Great deal, particularly when you're 22 years old. Took those, saw a bunch of friends, 6 months, ran out of money, and I said, gosh, what the heck am I going to do right now? Do I really want to go to graduate school? So just for the heck of it, I started opening up newspapers, saw an ad. Computer consultants, wave of the future. Do you have what it takes? Sound like a Marine Corps ad, right? So called the guy up. Guy basically threw me out of his office first interview. He's like, wait a minute, let me get this right. Okay, you never had a sales job. You look like a pretty good student at college, but I'm really looking for guys that are business majors, guys that have actually, taken Dale Carnegie courses and all that stuff. I said, look, I've been very successful at everything I've done. All right, give me a shot. I can do this. So he made me go through about another 7 or 8 interviews. I ended up becoming, as part of that company, executive recruiter. I had the best training that I ever had in my life. I was put through sales training. I also was assigned to what was called a data communications desk. I was learning how to recruit people to basically sell things like local area networking, packet switching, modems. Anyone here know what a modem is? Raise your hand. You guys are kidding me. You don't know what a modem is? That's what sits inside basically your computer when you want to use a dial tone. They don't do that anymore. Everyone here is spoiled. You have basically high-speed hardwire, megabits, gigabits. We didn't have that back in the day. You basically plugged a little RJ11 phone jack into the wall, and you heard this doot, 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 doot. 19.2, you thought it was really hot stuff. You connected. We were selling modems. Modems back in the early 80s went for $5,000 a modem. That was hot stuff. So my first job assignment, a little startup company out of Silicon Valley called 3Com. Anyone hear that company? Okay, we've got the wise man in the back. They were the first people to sell local area networking. When you communicate amongst all your computers and servers, that's a local area network. They now also have what's called a WAN, a wide area network. I learned all this stuff before I even knew how important it was. So, really important. Ground floor opportunity, learned sales, learned data communications. The guy who ran our recruiting office was a former vice president of Data General, which was a big mini-computer company back in the 80s. I didn't know how good I had it. I really stepped in a pile of it without knowing it. So, I'm still thinking about, do I want to go to graduate school? All right, I'll try this for a couple of years. Start making some pretty good money. I start getting connected with people that are starting up companies in a place called Silicon Valley out in California. That was basically the promised land. So, firstly, from there, I had a customer at Cable and Wireless, British phone company. At one time, they were basically the equivalent of AT&T in England. British gentleman there was the director of sales. Really took a shine to me. I had placed some salespeople and engineers there. And I just said, Mr. Phillips, if you ever have an opportunity for an inside sales guy, young guy, very aggressive, give me a call. I'd be very interested in working for you. 9 months later, he called me up and says, great, John Phillips here. Still good friends with this guy. although retired and living in Florida. He says, I'd like to have you come in and work for me. So I took that job. In the span of about a year, I went from inside sales manager to a national account manager. Reason being is we had a couple guys on the West Coast. Didn't work out. I'm 26 years old, raised my hand, said, I would love to go to California. I can do this job for you. By the way, the woman who ended up being my wife lived out in L.A. at the time, so I also had a vested interest in wanting to go to California because she was there. Went out. 6 months later, I closed a $2.4 million deal, a company called Varian Associates. High technology company based in Palo Alto. They make medical instrumentation amongst a number of things. I went from there, and one of my customers was up in Cambridge, Massachusetts. They were looking at telex switching, a company called Bolt, Beranek, and Newman. Anyone ever heard of them? Anyone ever heard of the internet? Raise your hand. All right. My apologies to former Vice President Al Gore, but he did not invent the internet. Okay? These folks did. BBN. Basically, it was on a government grant from an agency called DARPA. Yes, sir. Okay, thanks. Which was the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. It was basically called packet flow technology, which would say in the event of a nuclear attack from Russia, because we were very paranoid about going to war with Russia back then, in the event that a nuclear bomb would hit a defense facility or the White House, data would continue to flow around a failed route on a network. And that's basically what packet technology is, which is now what fuels the internet. When you get online and you try to talk to someone maybe in Macedonia, those packets basically break up throughout a worldwide network. You don't know if they were being routed through San Francisco, Hong Kong, England. They just throw them into the mail. A packet switch or the internet is basically just like the mail. You have a user ID, address, you throw it into the net, off it goes. And then it all reassembles the packets at the other end. I learned about this stuff back in the late 80s. I had no idea where this was going to go. I basically got the job as an international financial services manager. I got to sell to companies like Citicorp, Manufacturer Hanover Trust, Barclays Bank, Bank of New York, right down the line. And I got to travel. The one thing that I had going for me is my family's French-Canadian, and I spoke some French. And anytime they said, hey, we need a guy for international, I raised my hand. That's part of the reason why I got the job as a flight attendant, you know, out of 5,000 applicants. Not to mention I was a heck of a lot better looking than I am now, but also I had a good education. I could speak a foreign language. Really important. Okay? So I was basically raising my hand and said, I'll do international. I like that. I can speak a couple languages. From there, I then joined up with a company out in Sunnyvale, California, because I was totally convinced that something was going on out there in Silicon Valley. It was just a buzz was going on. All these high-tech startup companies. And Cambridge, Massachusetts, pretty neat place. A lot of people from MIT, Harvard, Yale, good guys. But something about Silicon Valley caught my attention. So I got recruited by a guy I worked for at Cable and Wireless by the name of Mike Papish. And they said, Greg, you're one of the few people who understand internet technology. And we actually think that there's going to be services for what are called ISPs, called Internet Service Providers. Novel concept. The ability to be able to have the public access the Internet, but the difference is we're going to do it over a dial-up line with modems. What you take for granted right now by being able to plug your laptop and get high-speed Internet didn't exist. If you wanted to basically be a traveling salesperson, you want to connect to the Internet, you couldn't do it. You couldn't do it. You picked up a phone, they had a little secretary, wrote down the message. Next day you picked it up, you returned the guy's phone call. There was no email. The only people that used email were academics in universities. So we launched the first remote access routing product. Revolutionary. I had the honor of being the product and sales and marketing manager for that. And I went out to every internet service provider. And there were thousands of them in the 90s. They were my customers. We were the first people to do commercial internet over dial-up. Now, grant you, there was no web browsing. It was pretty boring stuff. It was just email. There was no Google. Those guys didn't exist. It was, I want to send an email to Dr. Fiorentino. He sends an email back to me. What happened as the internet moved on, there were a number of things that were lacking, particularly what are called security protocols. How many people here log in and you get a user ID and password when you access the internet? Raise your hands. There was no protocol for that back in the 90s. There were about 10 different types of security procedures. Cisco had one, 3Com had one, Shiva had one. We basically ended up inventing a security authorization protocol called RADIUS, which stood for Remote Access Dial-In User Services. And we gave it away. We just gave it to everybody. And if you think Facebook is free to use right now, you're in for a rude awakening. I guarantee you in about another 3 years they're going to charge you for it. That's the same thing we did with Radius. We gave it away. And we had the best remote access product. Companies like America Online, PSINet, UUNet, they were all my customers. So basically, I was a founding member, employee number 18 in that company. We then got acquired by Lucent Technologies. They bought us for about $500 million. Pretty compelling. And then we moved on from there. I was running international operations for Lucent Technologies, which is now part of Alcatel, a French company. And from there, I did one more startup, a company called Blue Coat Systems, which was originally called Cash Flow, and now is Internet Accelerators. So, you look at where we went here, pretty wild ride for a guy who was basically a public administration major here at Westchester. But the thing that I always did is I wanted to be the best, and anything that I basically got into, I worked my butt off. And it's the same thing for you. It doesn't matter whether you're from Harvard, Stanford, MIT. I can tell you what, I work with guys from all those companies at a couple of these places, and I smoked them because I just had a better work ethic, and I wasn't expected to be given anything. And I think that comes from my roots. And the thing is, as John said, it's like that car. Your college education, it's a ticket. It's a ticket to possibly get an interview. But it's just like when you go from high school sports to college sports, everybody's good. Everyone's a state champion in the wrestling room, all right? Everyone's all league, everyone's all state. You have to prove yourself once again. And that's the same thing with what you're getting here. You're getting a ticket to compete. And I'll tell you what, I'll put up a good student from Westchester University any day against a guy from Stanford or Yale or Harvard, because I think generally you guys have to compete a bit tougher to be successful. And that's important. The thing is, I had a goal early in life that I wanted to be able to retire by age 40. And I was able to do that. And much like John, I wanted to coach. I had two boys. They were basically, kids that were about 6 and 8 years old. Spent a lot of time on the road. I have a very, very patient wife. I was gone weeks on end traveling the world. And basically, I had a goal that I wanted to be financially secure by age 40 so I can do other things. I had a goal. And I was able to do that. So I actually spent about 7 years as a high school wrestling coach, baseball coach, and athletic director. Got involved in my community, gave a lot back. Part of the reason why we come here today is to share our knowledge and experience with you, because we believe in giving back to your community. Our wrestling coach, Dale Bonzel, who's a National Wrestling Hall of Fame member, has a saying which got really catchy a few years ago. Pay it forward. Pay it forward. Give back to your community and remember where you came from. So what I did was I also set up a consulting company, raising venture capital over the last 6-7 years so I could have the time to be home to coach. I just retired as a coach a year ago, and I got recruited to run international operations for a company called Zingati. And basically what we do real quickly, it's virtual machines. Anyone familiar with that concept? Basically, it's taking away your hard-earned PC or workstation and putting all the applications on a centralized server, which is secure. And what we do is we basically go ahead and we give you the ability to manage those virtual machines from one point without having multiple types of management platforms. So this is the environment that I'm involved with right now. And what we do is we basically allow companies to be able to consolidate all their costs for multiple applications into one virtual machine. So it's pretty hard to explain all that in about 2 minutes, but that's what I'm involved with right now. So a little bit about my journey. We're now going to basically spend a few minutes and talk about the things that we value as what will help make you successful, that will help make make us successful. So I'd like to get my friend John back up here, and we'll talk a little more about his, what we like to call guiding principles.
I think we got 10 minutes in this area. You know, it's easy to be good. Hard.
There you go.
Oh. Most people have no problem hearing me. I don't need this, but apparently they're recording it for some austerity reason. Hey, good to great. You want to be a good student, show up at class, take some notes, listen in class, be there on time, find out when the teacher or professor, what they want and when they want it. It's pretty simple. Okay? Just go to class, take notes, pay attention. You want to be a good swimmer. Go to practice, eat right. It's pretty easy to be good. You want to be great, student, read before class, do some work after course, get in the library. It takes a little bit more. Most people don't want to do that stuff. Most people just want to get by. Some people don't show up at class. I had an anthropology class, and I think it was Anderson Hall. 3 hours every Tuesday. As soon as the light went on, because she would have a film about the Aborigines or whatever. As soon as that light would go out, I was out the door. Wasn't very good. Didn't get a very good grade in that class. Wasn't even good. But if I stayed up, if I did a little bit of more work, and I would have been a lot better. So easy to be good, a little harder to be great. Now, my principles started with motivation. I was a wrestling coach, a grad assistant. I'm working in the community at a property and casualty company. I'm married a few years. I got married my first semester of graduate school. We wanted to have a kid. I wanted to have a little wrestler. I wanted to have a little boy. I didn't. I had a little girl. And she's your age. But it takes money. And I went to my boss, Tom Evers. I learned a lot from Mr. Evers, W.J. Perry Corporation. And I said, and he had me selling. I had a little salary, no commission. And I was exceeding expectations. I was selling more than my salary. I said, Tom, I'd like to make a few thousand more dollars. And I'd like to have a kid someday. And he said, well, John, Bill Schuler came in a little while ago. His kid's getting ready to go to college. And, Tom, sort of put me in a situation. I said, I'm going nowhere here. I got to try something else. And that's what prompted me to look elsewhere. Washington was booming, getting resumes out. That doesn't work as much now, guys and girls. And that's what prompted me to try to do something a little better myself. But I have some guiding principles. And was to start my own business. And, there's startup technology businesses. In my case, it was a moving company. I had a North American van line. I'd been in the moving business, selling services, doing corporate calling. That was where my training came from. And for years, I was calling on Marriott Corporation. It's funny, but some of the companies that Greg worked for, I did some business with, and to an extent still do. Moved you from the UK. Anyway. Mine was the moving business. It could be a lot of things. It could be a pizza shop. It could be a Domino's, whatever you want. But principle number one, find a product or service that provides value. Right? Today, you guys get a pickup truck. Maybe you can move from one hall to the other, or off campus to on campus, or to your first, after you graduate, to an apartment somewhere. But a lot of people don't want to deal with that. Right? So they wanted a professional mover. Find a product or service that provides value. You got to have something that someone wants, whatever it may be. Then ensure awareness of you and your company. And that's what I was pretty good at. I wanted to be known wherever I was, whoever I talked to. I'm John Lacata. I own Relocation Systems. We're located out by Dulles Airport in Northern Virginia. And we blah, blah, blah. At the elevator speech, or, 20 seconds is what you do. But wherever I went, when I worked out at the Y in the morning, which I did for years, 5:30 in the morning, they knew me as that moving guy. And I got some of my best customers that I still do business with because of friends and relationships I made going to the Y or Gold's Gym or whatever you might have, just place where. But they knew me as the moving guy. Ensure awareness of you and your company, because someone may like you or want you, they'd want to hire you, but if they don't know what the heck you do. Third, you could have the greatest product in the world. You could have an internet service from 1984, but if no one knows about it, it doesn't sell. So I say sales, 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 sales. Sales, 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 sell. Sell yourself. If you're going to go to grad school, there's 1,000 people for your slot. You better be able to sell yourself. Sell, 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 sell. If you're in business, got to be awareness. To me, sell, 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 sell. I have business cards. If anybody's moving, I could help you move. Then the next thing, and took me a while to understand. I had to lose some money. I had to lose some employees. I had pain. Ensure you have processes and systems that are in place to duplicate and create efficiencies. You have a great product that has a start and a finish, a manufacturing and an end. Whatever your solution is, you got to document it, because you may die. I haven't died yet, or someone may want to go on vacation. So Joe needs to step in for Rosie. When that customer calls in, they still want the same level of service. Joe can't say, well, Rosie will be back in a week. She's on a cruise. Systems and processes. Creating efficiencies. Also very important. Took me a while to understand this. Protect the profitability of the company, and don't be ashamed to have earnings. I'm a sales guy. Well, don't be embarrassed to make some money. By the way, there are doctors and lawyers who make a lot of money. Salespeople who are successful, because there are some that aren't, a lot of them aren't, can make a lot of money. And you don't have to go to graduate school and get a law degree to do that. Okay? So, profitability. Don't be ashamed to sell it at a price for money. Don't be the cheapest guy on the block. Other thing, very important. Do everything in your power to have a loyal and stable workforce. Because when you hire people, even if you're not running a business as an owner, but you're managing a division, when you have turnover, you lose. So do the things that are important to create a loyal and stable workforce. Work hard. Again, I told you, I wasn't the smartest guy. I had some good qualities, and I learned from my mistakes, but I worked hard. I learned that from Russ. I worked hard. So you get there early, you work late. I can't tell you how to make a lot of money in a little bit of time, but I can tell you teach you some principles how to make some money if you put some time and effort in it. You got to have fun. If you're going to do this for 40 years, and you don't like it, you got to have fun. And I have fun. Every day I have fun. I don't care what the situation is, because I like having fun. And if you're going to do it, you want to do something that you like and enjoy. And again, the last thing sales, 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 sales. Greatest product in the world. If it's not selling, you're not making any money, your company can't sustain itself. Okay? Great? Thank you, guys.
Okay, I'll present the same, and I'll make it quick so this way we can get some questions in. What I feel has helped make me successful is, first of all, make the most of all your experiences. As John said, you've got to take that class that you don't think is going to help you somewhere along the line. And to that I say rubbish. My mom, to this day, she's 74 years old, and she always reminds me,
Well, why do I got to take a language class for? I'm never going to use that. I speak 11 languages now. Not really well, some better than others, but I speak 11 languages right now. Because my philosophy is, when I travel to another country, I want to make an effort to at least say hello or goodbye or thank you in the local language. It's a big world out there. It's a lot bigger than Pennsylvania. It's a lot bigger than the United States of America. But basically, fundamentals. People want to be respected. People want to be made to feel that they're important. So make the most of all your experiences. You got a class, you think you don't need it, go and get the most out of it. You're paying good hard-earned dollars to come to school here. Jakes will wait for you, okay? Parties will wait for you. And that's what I tell kids when I was a coach, too. You got the rest of your life to do other stuff. You want to be good at something, get the most out of it. I don't care if it's a philosophy class, an astrophysics class, a language class. Make the most of it. Second thing, know your business better than your competition. I'll tell you a quick story. When I worked for Cable and Wireless, I had to do a sales call one day. I went to Citicorp. I didn't have a system engineer that could come with me. He was sick that day. I went in there. I gave the blanket sales pitch. Here's my brochure. Buy our stuff. I got ripped to shreds. I had 3 technical guys that said, all right, dumb salesman. Let's see how stupid we can make you look. I was furious. I literally took my briefcase and I threw it across the subway car on the ride back to central part of the city because I was humiliated. I made a vow from that day I will never, ever have to depend on a system engineer to do a presentation for me. So I made darn sure that I studied up with my competition, and it didn't matter if it was Cisco Systems, didn't matter if it was 3Com, didn't matter if it was Alcatel. I would know their products better than they did. And that's why I was very successful as both a field salesperson and as an executive. Third thing, stick to good fundamentals. I don't know how many of you folks showed up here today expecting to hear about some magic way that we became successful. It wasn't. It was through hard work and passion. As John said, you got to enjoy what you're doing. All right? If you're miserable every day and you show up and you're grumpy, I'll tell you what, you'll never have an opportunity to work with a dynamic company. I've done 7 startups in my career. One of them was the 10th most successful IPO in the history of NASDAQ. That was cash flow. We went from $17 to $189 in 3 weeks. Pretty good payday, right? But we worked our butts off to get there, but we loved what we did. And I hate to lose just like he does. So once again, it comes back to the competition, all right? Being able to want to be the best. You need to understand what your competition does. And don't get complacent. Every time you think you're on top, whether you're wrestling, a business guy, whatever, if you sit back and rest on your laurels and you're not hungry, you're going to lose. Someone's going to come up behind you and they're going to take your place. Famous quote from a former politician, Hubert Humphrey, ran for president back in the 60s, was governor of Minnesota. The harder you work, the luckier you get. And boy, oh boy, is that true. I mean, I had friends here, and they would say, geez, how'd you end up with a good GPA? Well, instead of going to Jake's for 4 hours, I would show up, have a couple of beers, say my hellos, order a cheesesteak, say my goodbyes. I parked my butt in the library, okay? Just didn't happen on its own. I made sure I had fun, but I made sure I managed my time. Time management is key. Don't spend all your time on Facebook when you got a research project to do. Get that done. Facebook will wait for you, okay? So will the bar, but the opportunity may not, because someone else is going to get up early and beat you to the punch. Take on work, the others won't. I live a pretty nice lifestyle, all right? I own a vineyard up in Northern California. I've traveled the world. I've been able to do some things that I couldn't have done as a kid. But you know something? I worked at Mr. Donut. I mopped floors here at the Westchester State Cafeteria. I was a house cleaner, a window washer, a house painter, all right? I did what I had to do to help put myself through college because my folks couldn't afford to put both my brother and I through school and pay us both 100%. He said, my dad said, after second year, you're on your own. I got a few bucks my freshman year for wrestling. Coach didn't like me after that, so that ended. So I was on my own. Don't be afraid to take on work. The biggest problem I see with most kids coming out of college right now is, hey, I got a diploma. I went to MIT. I went to Stanford. I want a $100,000 salary, and I want to be boss. Bullshit. Excuse my French. Bullshit. You know what I look for when I interview kids now? What did you do in the summer? Did you work? Did you get a job? Did you help put yourself through school? I'm not so impressed by GPA. It helps. It's an indication of intelligence. But there's one thing that you can't teach. That's motivation. Take on the hard work that other people won't. Because if you don't, you're going to get burnt in the dust. I've started 7 companies. I'll make the coffee. I'll wash the floors. I'll do whatever it takes. Don't think you're better to do something. You roll up your sleeves. You get your hands dirty. Income is a function of calculated risk. Okay? What I'm not saying is go out and take stupid risks, but you want to make sure that if you're going to take a risk, you make sure it's a calculated one. All right? I look at opportunities in high tech. Yeah, I mean, I had my father-in-law tell me 25 years ago. He's from Virginia. He goes, son, you need to work for a big company and stay there for 40 years. I'm a startup guy. I go to the company, I stay there for 5 years, we sell it, we move on. But I make darn sure it's a technology that I can make money on. This is really important. Work to live, just don't live to work. All right? If you're just showing up every day just to make a buck, you're going to be miserable. You're going to be a miserable coot hating what you do. I made donuts. I talked to people. I would sing. People thought I was like this crazy guy down there. It doesn't matter what I did. I showed up, and like John said, I had fun doing it. There's nothing harder than being a competitive collegiate wrestler. We're on a nationally ranked team here. There's a saying that Dan Gable, the famous Olympian and coach at Iowa, said, once you've wrestled, everything else in life is easy. And he was right, because that's the hardest thing you can do, but it's done us well. Don't be afraid to work hard. You got to do it, but you got to enjoy it. Treat others the way you want to be treated. I've seen too many people in business, whether they're line managers, CEOs, directors, they think they got the big job, they forgot where they came from, they treat their employees lousy. Bad idea. You know something? My wife is amazed to this day that I've got people that work for me in 40 different countries around the world. They come out to San Francisco, they call me up and take me out to dinner. Why? Because I always had their back. Be tough, but be fair. And I would never say, well, I'm too busy to get on an airplane to go to the Middle East to help you close the deal, or I'm too important to stay up till 4 o'clock in the morning to get a proposal out the door. You lead by example. If you want to have a good company, you want to be an entrepreneur, you think Bill Gates sat on his butt for years? You think Steve Jobs sat on his butt for years? I know those guys. They worked their keisters off. They worked 80, 90 hours a week, and they were there in the office Saturdays and Sundays. All right? They made sure they had fun doing it, but they worked hard. They just didn't show up, stuck their feet on the desk, and wait for the checks to roll on. Last but not least, the reason why we're here today is pay it forward. Give back. Okay? This is my dream. I had this dream 30 years ago when I graduated here. I want to come back here and be able to present because I had knowledge that I can share with you. All right? Get involved in your community. By the way, Dr. Fiorentino, you're getting a check today, going to your business school. And that's a benefit of this. You're welcome. And it's a pleasure to having us here. All right? Get back into your community. Pay it forward. I'm not saying you got to have a library in your name or you got to go out there and build a football field, but pay it forward. Mentor someone when you've got something good to say. And I hope 30 years from now, a few of you are back here. Okay? When he and I are off in the sunset. Pay it forward. All right? That's all I've got to say. Thank you.